Hello, welcome to day 51. So we have crossed that 10% point in the 500 days. And if you're still here, I want to congratulate you for continuing. You've probably gotten a lot more out of the first 50 days than you realize. In this past week, we looked at NTI Matthew 18, 19, 20, and we started NTI Matthew 21. And I just want to go over a few of the highlights, starting with NTI Matthew chapter 18 said, I have told you before not to think for yourself, and I have asked you to lay yourself aside. One cannot maintain self-identity and self-control and be healed of self. I want to give you some perspective about what this is talking about using the 4 principles of God, which I introduced last week. This is the 4 principles of God again. And what's important about the 4 principles of God is that what you actually are is the first principle of God. What you actually are is pure, unmanifest life intelligence, isness. You know, we refer to that as the Father, as if it's something other than us, or heaven, as if it's something other than us, or source, as if it's something other than us. But this is our reality right here. It's our reality right now. However, most of us perceive ourself as a person in a world, which means we perceive ourselves down here in the 4th principle of God, which is called a dream and called illusion. And that's why waking up is the symbol that is used for waking up through these other identities, I'll call them for now, through these other identities to our true identity, which is really beyond identity entirely. And that's what the spiritual path is all about, is making that journey up from the 4th principle of God back to where we actually are, what we actually are, the first principle of God. So with that said, notice that if we continue to really think we are the person, and we continue to think like the person and behave like the person, we actually never leave the 4th principle of God. That's why this paragraph says, I have told you before not to think for yourself. And I have asked you to lay yourself aside. One cannot maintain self-identity as a person or self-control based on the person's thoughts about the world and be healed of this idea of self, be healed of the 4th principle of God, or wake up from the 4th principle of God. In fact, there was a comment in NTI Matthew 19 from verses 27 to 30 that I would like to share with you too while we're looking at the 4 principles of God. It said, the world is something you must let go of, because your will is something you must let go of, and the world is your will. Well, first of all, you can see that the world is in the 4th principle of God. And again, if we're to awaken up to this first principle of God, the world is something we need to let go of. But what does it mean when it says the world is something you must let go of, because your will is something you must let go of, and the world is your will? What does it mean when it says the world is your will? If we look at this as a fall from truth, which I don't know that that's the best symbol, a fall. I think this is a natural experience that God has gone through, but a lot of people refer to it as a fall. So let's use that symbol for a moment. If we look at this as a fall from truth, then you could say the first step in the fall was to become the second principle of God. We're no longer seeing ourselves as the first principle of God. We now see ourselves as a subject awareness, as an I am. This is like something, although it's something formless that now has the ability to be aware of something other than itself. And once this ability arose, then what also arose was a desire for something to be aware of. That developed the creative process. And through the creative process came the world, the dream, the illusion. So what this is saying when it says the world is something you must let go of because your will is something you must let go of, and the world is your will, it's talking to us at this level. It's saying to consciousness, to subject awareness, the world is something you need to let go of. You wanted the world, but in order to awaken back to what you truly are, you have to put down these toys. So we need to awaken from the idea that we are the self. And as consciousness, we need to put down the toys of the world, our interest in the world. And when these two things are done, we awaken to our truth, the first principle of God. There was another line in NTI Matthew chapter 18 that I wanted to talk about at verses 5 and 6. It says, love your brothers and be at peace with them. Accept them as they are and where they seem to be. The question that some people might ask is, what does accepting my brothers as they are have to do with letting go of self and letting go of the world? If you pay attention to when you want someone to be different than they are, notice that you are thinking with thoughts as if you are this person in a world. You know, if someone is, for example, talking a lot, and I have an appointment I want to get to, and I want this person to stop talking so I can walk away and get to my appointment. All those thoughts are about me as a person in a world. So if I am able to be in acceptance of this person talking as much as they seem to be talking right now, I am letting go of the thoughts of myself as a person in a world. Only the person in the world judges. Only the person in the world controls. Only the person in the world wants things to be different than they are. So this is a step in the right direction. Love your brothers and be at peace with them. Accept them as they are and where they seem to be. By practicing this type of unconditional love with others, we are letting go of the thoughts that tell me I am this person in this world. I want to talk a little bit about forgiveness. What is forgiveness? Often people have questions about that. For the most part, forgiveness is becoming the superconductor with your judgments, which we practiced last week. When you notice a judgment coming up about another person or a judgment coming up about a situation, and you become the superconductor and you allow that judgment to move right on through, you are practicing forgiveness. One thing that this week's reading talked about, and one thing that you may be experiencing as you're practicing becoming the superconductor with judgment, is you may experience resistance. Resistance is keeping whatever's moving through from moving on through and disappearing. It's as if something in you wants to cling to that. And so people also often ask, you know, what do I do with this resistance? And the answer is to become the superconductor with the resistance. So let's imagine that I have a judgment against a person over there because of the way they're dressed. And I notice that judgment. I don't think they should be dressed that way here, wherever we are. And so I want to become the superconductor with the judgment, but I'm feeling this resistance because I'm so sure I'm right. You should not be dressed that way here, wherever this is that we are. So since I can't seem to become the superconductor with the judgment, I shift and I become the superconductor with the resistance that I'm feeling, right? So that's how that works. So letting go of resistance is becoming the superconductor with resistance. Forgiving a grievance, a grudge, a judgment is becoming a superconductor with the judgment. And of course, you had some practice with that last week. I want to read one more thing from this week's reading, and then I want to address some challenges that you might have experienced with becoming the superconductor. So here's the reading. Watch your heart when you believe you have forgiven. Be careful that you do not find a grievance or a grudge there. If you have forgiven, which means you became the superconductor with a particular judgment, and then you notice that you still feel that judgment against that person or against that situation, that just means that it hasn't moved all the way through yet. It got caught on some resistance, or it was only partially moving through when you thought you were done. And so all you need to do is become the superconductor again. When you have completely processed something through the superconductor process, which is the letting go or the forgiveness process, it'll be gone. So if it's still there, it's just not done yet. Now, I do want to say that some things can be processed through the forgiveness process pretty quickly, pretty easily, and they're gone. There are deeper judgments that we have, which really have turned into beliefs that take quite some time to process. For example, if you have judged yourself as unworthy, or if you have judged yourself as guilty, or maybe you've judged another family member, a parent, as guilty. Some of these things have very, very deep roots, and you may actually become the superconductor with this judgment, with this belief, multiple times for years before it is fully processed. That's okay. It's perfect. That's wonderful. It doesn't have to be fast. Just know that as long as you can still find a grievance or a grudge, you still have work to do. And as the reading said, when you love your brother like the angels do, which is perfect, and there's absolutely nothing getting stuck, then the forgiveness is complete. So continue to become the superconductor with a judgment or with a belief every time it comes up until it no longer comes up, no matter how long that takes. Now, let's look at addressing some challenges that you may have experienced last week. Last week, we had quite a bit of practice noticing our judgments, and then becoming the superconductor with the judgments. And some of the challenges you might have discovered. One, you might have found that you moved from the feeling of the judgment into the superconductor process and then slipped right back into the judgment. Like maybe you got into the part of the process where you were starting to become aware of your environment, noticing the sounds, noticing the sights, becoming present in the moment, and then you went right back to judging again. Well, I want to remind you of something that we read in NTI Matthew 13 a couple weeks ago. The choice you make will seem to be made many times in complete sincerity and truth of heart. And then you will seem to slip and forget the choice you have made. Do not let this distress you. Simply make the choice again. Remember, the subconscious is resistant to change. And it really is the programming or the thinking patterns in the subconscious that is leading to this current judgment. So when you're moving through that superconductor process and you seem to get stuck and boop, you're right back into the judgment again, just start the superconductor process again. Even if it happens 5, 6 times, whatever, just start over again. This is how you are retraining your brain to go through the superconductor process without being hijacked by thinking patterns that are in the subconscious. So just simply make the choice again, simply start again. Another challenge you may have noticed is you might find that you're forgetting to become the superconductor when you judge, or you're even forgetting to notice that you're judging. Just judge, 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 judge without saying, whoa, look, I'm judging. So something else from NTI Matthew chapter 13. Do not worry that you do not tend to your choice enough. For if you tend to your choice every time you remember, that is enough. For in the tending of your choice, the tending itself will extend until you are tending to your choice in every moment as you desire. Remember, we talked about when you remember to notice that you judged, you remember to become the superconductor, you want to do it right then. What's basically happening is your spiritual intuition has been repressed by your willingness to listen to your egoic thoughts. And now we're in the process of reversing that. So we're bringing spiritual intuition out of repression. That means that it's mostly unconscious, it's mostly unnoticed. But when you notice it, you want to follow it. So when it points out that you're judging, you want to notice that and become the superconductor. When it reminds you to become the superconductor, you want to notice that and follow through. This will help to bring your spiritual intuition out of repression so that eventually your spiritual intuition is much more conscious and can guide you throughout the day and everything that you do. So do not worry that you do not tend to your choice enough. Just tend to your choice every time that you remember, and that will help to bring spiritual intuition back out of repression. You also might have found some strong resistance to becoming the superconductor with a particular judgment, possibly because you feel strongly that you're right. You may even feel indignation is needed in order to correct a wrong. Like, if I am not mad about this, if I don't judge this, it's never going to get fixed, right? So you may feel that. I want to share something with you from NTI Matthew chapter 17. Do not think that the world is reality, or that the symbols of the world are reality, and do not argue them. See them as symbols and ask me what use they have for you. So maybe there's something out there happening in the world that I am judging, but my mind says this judgment is necessary because that is wrong. That should not be happening. This is saying don't argue that. That's holding on to the world. And of course, that's holding on to the fourth principle of God. So don't argue our point of view about that. Instead, go within to spiritual intuition, go within and say, woof, I notice a lot of judgment about this that feels righteous to me. And, I cannot understand how I can just stand by and let that be. But Holy Spirit, I am willing to see differently. I am willing to see as you do. I am willing to know truth. What is there that you would have me see? What is there that you would have me do, right? So you turn within, you turn to surrender. I also want to read this from NTI, Matthew chapter 18. Forgiveness may not always seem easy. You will encounter great resistance in forgiving your brothers and in forgiving yourself, and I'll add sometimes in forgiving the world. Do not let resistance alarm you. Resistance is fear, and it is the fear of letting go of the self, or the fear of letting go of the world, or we could call it the fear of awakening up to the first principle of God. Resistance is fear, and to give in to resistance is to give in to fear, which means we stay in our current belief system. Remember, fear can keep you from me. It can keep us from the truth. So when you feel resistance, recognize it for what it is. The only reason I don't want to forgive this thing right now is because I am resisting awakening. This is the subconscious not wanting to change, wanting to keep me here, thinking I'm a person in a world, the fourth principle of God. So when you feel resistance, recognize it for what it is. Realize that resistance is a path from me, and ask yourself which path you would place your feet on now. Now, do I want to stay here in this perception of being a person in a world, or do I want to realize myself as that first principle of God, whatever that is? Do I want that spiritual awakening, that enlightenment that the masters have? Do I want to see as the masters see? Give your heart to me, Holy Spirit says. Ask me to help. Once again, ask Holy Spirit in whatever way that you want to, through a prayer or in whatever way that you want to. Ask Holy Spirit for guidance. And let yourself rest as resistance passes on to nothingness. Become the superconductor. Then the way is clear for you to forgive and accept the peace of God in joy. Lovely advice. So this coming week, for the most part, there's not a lot of change in what's going on this coming week. Your assignments will be pretty clear. This coming weekend, though, the special assignment is going to be an audio meditation, which is going to be the foundation for next week's meditation, which will be new. We won't be doing the brain relaxation past this week. So this weekend, consider listening to that audio meditation a couple of times. And that way, next week, when you begin our new meditation technique, you will feel prepared to do that. This week, we'll continue the brain relaxation technique. Remember also that since today is a review day, to pick out a day that you want to repeat from last week, possibly one of the exercises with becoming the superconductor with judgment, or possibly making a list of people and the expectations you have of them, and then having willingness to let go of those expectations. Whatever feels right for you, but pick out an exercise to repeat, and that's going to be your assignment throughout the day tomorrow. And then, of course, tomorrow you'll have a new post with a new reading, and we'll begin our new week. So see you next week. Bye.